Yo, what's good, people? King of the Pit. We're not pitting today, people. We're going to delve into conspiracy, yeah? Uh, I like to look at... I, li- I like to look at things from a different perspective. This ain't going to be a conspiracy-based channel. I will look at some popular music-related conspiracies, as long as they don't touch the powers that be, right? Because there's a lot of serious stuff that should be said about the marketing and promotion of, particular messages and, you know, the media influences to put a full stop to that. And as much as I would like to talk about that sort of stuff, we're not gonna. But we are gonna talk about this today: the suicide of Kurt Cobain. So I've listened to. And when I say we're going to talk about it, bro, we're going to go down the Wikipedia page and see if there's anything interesting worth talking about. Um, when I've done the Kurt Cobain or should I say Nirvana listen throughs on the reaction channel, we have raised interesting discussion about the passing of Kurt. And through not looking into the inner workings of the man's mind and psychoanalyzing the hell out of his life external to Nirvana, through the art and the artists and the performances I've seen and so forth, in my personal opinion, in my personal opinion, he didn't seem like the sort of dude who would kill himself. Um, I think it's a very odd occurrence. Without even initially looking at the odd occurrences around his passing, I just genuinely think he did not seem like a guy at the peak of his career with the band that was going to do that. I mean, I got a crazy conspiracy. I I got a crazy conspiracy, right? This is hypothetical. This is nonsense, right? I'm speaking absolute nonsense here, but I'm just telling you, right? We're pinpointing it in one particular direction. What if we looked at the band? What if we looked at the success of another band that rose from the ashes of Nirvana, and somebody who would never have the finger pointed at him? Think about that, right? I'm only joking. I'm only joking. I'm only joking. So let's have a look at suicide of Kurt Cobain. So it states on April 8th, 1994. So aside from the conspiracies, we're literally just going to have a look at the details here and see what the hell went on. So on April 8th, 1994, and just before we delve into it, like I said, we've raised some interesting discussion on the reaction channels because some people are like strictly like, nah, Kurt killed himself. Whereas some people are just like, bruh, that's not the case. There's a great polarity behind it, which continues selling records and t-shirts to this day, right? Which is exactly something a record label or a business would want. So on April 8th, 1994, Kurt Cobain, the lead singer and guitarist of the American rock band Nirvana, was found dead at his home on Lake Washington Boulevard in Seattle, Washington. Forensic investigators and the coroner later determined that Cobain had died on April the 5th, 3 days prior to the discovery of his body. So Kurt must you would assume Kurt was, a character who was being left alone when need be, because some people are just, bruh, I'd probably be the same. People just probably like, fucking hell, he's been quiet for a few days. I guess it's normal, but whereas some people get phone calls each and every day, don't they, talking to everyone and anyone. So Seattle Police Department incident report stated that Cobain was found with a shotgun across his body, had suffered a visible gunshot wound to the head, and that a suicide note had been discovered nearby. Have we got that here? Oh no, it doesn't go into depth on that. Seattle confirmed his death as a suicide. Following his death, conspiracy theories that Cobain was murdered was spread and reported to the FBI, partially due to an Unsolved Mysteries episode dedicated to Cobain's death. Bro, we need to watch that together. Yeah, we need to watch that together. So the background. Kurt Cobain was the lead singer and guitarist of the American rock band Nirvana, one of the most influential acts of the 90s, and one of the best-selling acts of all time. I personally don't think that many rock stars had a natural death. Don't think MJ did. Don't think. So someone brought up Prince, and I don't know how Prince passed, but I know, the maneuvering he was doing prior to his death. When you go against the money, when you go against the puppet master, right? It all comes to an end. Kurt Cobain was lead singer and guitarist of the American rock band Nirvana, one of the most influential acts of the 90s and one of the best-selling bands of all time. Throughout most of his life, Cobain suffered from chronic bronchitis, inflammation of the lungs. All right, I don't know much about that. And intense pain due to an undiagnosed chronic stomach condition. Right, undiagnosed. He was also prone to alcoholism, suffered from depression, and regularly used drugs and inhalants. Cobain had two uncles who died of suicide by firearm. Okay. Now, I'm not a psychologist, right? But I do know, when you allow you can't help but allow some particular energy into your life, and it can influence your choices, right? So, on March 4th, 1994, Cobain was hospitalized in Rome following an overdose of Rohypnol and alcohol. His management agency, Gold Mountain Records, said that the overdose was accidental and that he was suffering from the flu and fatigue. However, Cobain's wife, Courtney Love, later confirmed that the overdose had been a suicide attempt. Now, this is where you need a bit of background information. Things like this, which have just been brushed over on the Wikipedia. You need to have a look at how this played out. It quite simply says he was hospitalized due to an overdose of Rohypnol and alcohol, but how did it get to that? If it's his own actions, it's his own actions, but, However, Cobain's wife, Courtney Love, later confirmed that the overdose had been a suicide attempt. He took 50 pills, probably forgot how many he took, but there was a definite suicidal urge to be gobbling. Right. Cobain's cousin Beverly, a nurse, said that the family had a history of suicide and that Cobain had been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and bipolar disorder. Where did the money go? Where did the money go? Where did the money go? Where did the royalties go? Where did the credits go? That's the question that needs to be asked here. Where did the money go? Where was it going and where did it go? Cobain said that his stomach pain had been so severe during Nirvana's 91 European tour that it became suicidal and that taking heroin was the only thing that saved. Alright, Nirvana fans. Was Cobain genuinely on heroin? I'm asking you that because I've not seen any inclination that this guy was a heroin user. That's out of my own ignorance, but I'm learning here. Halfway through the European tour, he states, I remember saying I'll never go on tour again until I have this fixed because I wanted to kill myself, wanted to effing blow my head off. I was so tired of it. It's a great quote to have prior to the suicide, right? If it was a setup. In Charles Cross's biography, Heavier Than Heaven, who's Charles Cross? Music journalist. Who cares? Nirvana bassist Chris Novoselic is quoted on seeing Cobain in the days before his intervention. He was really quiet, blah. Won't connect with anybody. Novoselic's offer to buy dinner for Cobain resulted in unintentionally driving him to score heroin. His dealer was right there. He wanted to get effed up into... Drummer Dave Grohl reflected that by the time they recorded You Know You're Right, it was not a pleasant time for the band. Kurt was unwell. Then he was well, then he was unwell. Okay, yep. It's very vague. On April 1st, 1994, Cobain left Exodus Recovery Center, the Los Angeles drug rehabilitation clinic he had checked into 2 days before by scaling a 6-foot wall. On April 2nd, Cobain took a taxi to a Seattle gun shop where he purchased and received a receipt for shotgun shells. Cobain told the taxi driver he wanted to buy shells because he had been burglarized. On April 8th, Cobain's body was discovered in the greenhouse above the garage at his Lake Washington Boulevard East house by VECA electronic employee Gary T. Smith. Plenty of Gary Smiths in the world, I'll tell you that, man, who had arrived that morning to install security lighting. Wait, so he got found by a contractor. So he was married at the time. I think they were going through issues, weren't they? Which I'm sure we'll come across later into this. He must not have been in touch with his wife if it took a contractor 3 days on to find the guy. And this guy is a rock star of his time. We've looked at the footage of the crowds Nirvana were pulling. How was nobody in touch with him for this long? I know it happens, and you know, it's 94. It's a little harder to get in touch with someone than it might be now. But jeez Louise, man. Smith initially thought Cobain was asleep until he saw blood coming out of Cobain's ear. So he shot himself in the head. And this guy came across Cobain and thought he was asleep. He shot himself in the head with a shotgun. Bruh, Mayhem showed us what that looks like. That don't look like someone just having a nap. He also found hell. I've seen some guy on social media, right? Quite well, I wouldn't say funnily, but some people maybe ironically or unironically refer it. He's a songwriter, or he's a singer, plays the guitar, and he survived a suicide attempt by shooting himself in the face with a shotgun. And people say the spirit of Cobain is back, right? And you should see the effect of his appearance. Honestly, you should see the... It's crazy. I don't know if you can Google that and have a look at that. That don't look like some guy just falling asleep. So, that contract is a bit fishy, right? He also found a suicide note with a pen stuck through it inside a flower pot. A Remington Model 1120 gauge shotgun purchased for Cobain by his friend musician Dylan Carson was found in Cobain's... Who's Dylan Carson? He was the founder of the band Earth. Oh, they're dragging Dylan into this. Is there any conspiracies about my man Dylan? Well, it had been legally purchased by Carlson at Stan Baker's gun shop in Seattle. Although conductor David Woodard had built a dream machine for Cobain, rumours that Cobain had been using the device heavily in the days leading up to his suicide were contradicted by later reports. What the hell is a dream machine? Fuck knows, who cares? Cobain did not want the gun purchased in his name because he thought police might seize it for his own protection. The police had taken away his guns twice in the previous 10 months. The King County Medical Examiner noted puncture wounds on the inside of both the right and left elbows. The shotgun was not checked for fingerprints until May 6, 1994. The Seattle police report states that the shotgun was inverted on Cobain's chest with his left hand wrapped around the barrel. His left hand was wrapped around the barrel of the gun. And yeah, people, I'm reading it, but I do approach... I can't remember what I've read before, but I had a brief sort of look around the... suspicious occurrences that happened around this event. So I am automatically perceiving this from a position of skepticism, purely as what I know, what I read, even though I can't tell you what I did do. Like, I've must not have cared that much, but the information I read was pretty damning that it was a setup, you know? On April 14th, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer reported that Cobain was high on heroin when he pulled the trigger. The paper reported that the toxicological tests determined that the level of morphine in Cobain's bloodstream was 1.52 milligrams per litre, and that there was evidence of Valium in his blood. The report contained a quote from Randall Bassell of the Chemical Toxicological Institute and author of all 12 editions of the... Why are you plugging this guy? Look at this. This report contained a quote from Randall Bassell of the Chemical Institute and author of all 12 editions of the Common Forensic Toxicology textbook, Disposition of Toxic Drugs and chemicals in man, including its chapter on heroin. I mean, fair play. It does legitimize the words, but you have to question why you go. You know, they're very vague about what they want to be vague about, and then they go in incredible detail about other things, and that's what has me question. You know, when the information provided is incredibly concentrated in particular areas, I think, why are you giving me all this information? Are you trying to influence me by saying the person who, you know, provided the information was a professional? Because we all know, like, that's a manipulative technique that's utilized within the media. Yeah, I'm a professional. Yeah, I'm a music critic. Listen to my words. Yeah, which stated that Cobain's heroin levels were at a high concentration by any account, but that the strength of the dose would depend on many factors, including how habituated Cobain was to the drug. In March 2014, I could tell you that. In March 2014, the Seattle Police Department developed 4 rolls of film that had been left in an evidence vault. According to Seattle Police, the photographs depict the scene of Cobain's corpse more clearly than previous Polaroid images taken by the police. Detective Mike Blah, a cold case investigator, was asked to look at the film because it is 20 years later and it's a high media case. Doing it for clout. Do you know what I mean? 20 years later, it's a high media case. Do it for clout. How about you fucking do something that's happening right now? The guy stated that the official cause of Cobain's death remained suicide and that the images would not be released to the public. However, the images were released in 2016. What images were? The scene of Cobain's corpse. We might have a look at that. According to police spokesperson, the SPD receives at least one request weekly, mostly through Twitter, to reopen the investigation. This resulted in the maintenance of the basic... Bruh, whatever's happened's been brushed under the carpet if there was anything suspicious. On April 10th, 1994, a public memorial service was held at Seattle Center where a recording of Courtney Love reading Cobain's suicide note was played. Near the end of the vigil, Love arrived and distributed some of his clothing to fans who remained. In the following days, Love consoled and mourned with fans who came to her house. Cobain's body was cremated. Love divided his ashes. She kept some in a teddy bear and some in an urn. She took another portion of his ashes to the Buddhist monastery in Ithaca, New York, which is where we heard that Grateful Dead live record. There was some of his remains ceremonially blessed by Buddhist monks and mixed into clay, which were used to make satsas. Okay. A final ceremony was arranged for Cobain by his mother in 1999. That was attended by both Love and Tracy Miranda. Okay. A Buddhist monk chanted while Cobain's daughter Frances Cobain scattered his ashes. Okay, cool. Sorry, people. How much information have we got here? Shall we just jump straight to the conspiracy theories? Let's have a look at the reactions. Let's just see who's commenting. Several of Cobain's friends were surprised by suicide. Mark Lanigan, a longtime friend, told Rolling Stone, "I never knew Cobain to be suicidal. I just knew he was going through a tough time." In the same article, Carlson stated that he wishes Cobain or someone close to him had told him that the Rome incident was a suicide attempt. Carlson stated that he wished Cobain or someone close to him had told him that the Rome incident was a suicide attempt. He didn't perceive it as such. Who's Mark Lanigan, the guy from the Trees band, Screaming Trees, yeah. Anthony Kiedis, lead singer of the Red Hot Chilies, expressed his feelings in his autobiography, Scar Tissue. He's a wrong in him, innit, Kiedis. The news of Cobain's death sucked the air out of the entire house. Didn't feel like I felt when Hillel died. Never heard of the guy. It was more of the world just suffered a great loss. Kurt's death was unexpected. It was an emotional blow and we all felt it. Okie dokie, I don't care. Let's just go to the conspiracies. So Richard Lee, the first to object publicly to the report of suicide was Seattle public access host Richard Lee, an independent journalist from Seattle, Washington, best known for his conspiracy theories regarding the death of Kurt Cobain. Okay, he was the first to make this claim, supposedly. A week following Cobain's death, Lee aired the first episode of an ongoing series called Kurt Cobain Was Murdered. A week following. saying there were several discrepancies in the police reports, including several changes in the nature of the shotgun blast. Lee acquired a video that was taped on April 8th from the tree outside Cobain's garage, showing the scene around Cobain's body, which he claimed showed a marked absence of blood for what was reported as a point-blank shotgun blast to the head. Well, that's what the contractor sort of ran into, right? Oh, he was just bleeding a little bit from the ear. Bruh, if you're seeing someone who's been hit in the head by a shotty, that thing blows your head up, man. But what do I know? What do I know, that's just the most, the oddest thing I've come across up until this point on this Wikipedia page. So, Lee acquired a video that was taped on April the 8th from the tree outside Cobain's garage, showing the scene around Cobain's body, which he claimed showed a marked absence of blood for what was reported as a point-blank shotgun blast to the head. Several pathology experts have stated that a shotgun blast inside the mouth often results in less blood, unlike a shotgun blast to the head. Okay. That's crazy to me, but okay. That's crazy. I don't know these things, but the idea of that is crazy. Like it's just weird, isn't it? Tom Grant, a private investigator hired by Love to find Cobain after his departure from Tom Grant, a private investigator hired by Love to find Cobain after his departure from drug rehabilitation, said he believes that Cobain was murdered. Now this is mad, right? I don't need a reason why. But imagine your wife hiring a private investigator to follow you. I mean, at the very least, how toxic is that? Is that not the most toxic thing you've ever heard? What do you mean a private investigator? Why? Grant's theory has been analysed and questioned by several books, television shows and films, including the 2015 docudrama Soaked in Bleach. Grant was still under Love's employment when Cobain's body was found. Grant has stated that he finds the events surrounding Cobain's death to be filled with lies, contradictions in logic, and countless inconsistencies. Motivated by profit over truth as well as a web of business deals and personal career considerations, Courtney Love, her lawyers, and many of Courtney's industry supporters have engaged in an effort to keep the public from learning the real facts of this case. Now, I'm not pointing the finger at no one here. I'm simply reading this Wikipedia page, all right? There are several components to Grant's theory. One component is Grant's assertion that Cobain could not have injected himself with such a large dose of heroin and still have been able to pull the trigger. Grant says he based this belief on his lack of knowing about any studies or evidence to indicate that such a high dose could be survived, although he does not rule out whether a counterexample might exist. Another component is Grant's belief that Cobain's note was doctored to make it only appear to be a suicide note. A third component is the purported lack of fingerprints from Cobain or others at the scene. He also asserts that Love had financial motivation to kill Cobain, both in the form of rumours that Cobain was planning to divorce her and the fact that Cobain had turned down an offer to headline the 94 Lollapalooza festival for nearly 10 mil. Bruh, 1994, headlining the fest for 10 million. What? That must have been a one-off. That's so much. So you're looking at the money. You're looking at the money here. That's not a couple of grand. That's not a couple of grand. So as I said earlier, where did the money go? Where did the credits go? Where did the royalties go? Where did the money go? Kurt Cobain were writing the songs. He's got songwriting credits, right? I know the label owns the masters, generally speaking. Kurt Cobain owns the songwriting credits. He wrote the songs. Where did them credits go? Did they go to his daughter? Who made the decision as to where them credits went? In studying the Rome incident, because let's say, for example, you go to your local rock bar, yeah, and they play Smells Like Teen Spirit on the system. They have to be licensed in order to play music at their establishment, right? There's a performance royalty, performance rights organization that'll be within your particular area of the world that goes to these venues, goes to these places and says you need to pay the fee, right? Because not only do they make money off of it, but they distribute the money to the artists, to the songwriters. Yeah. It's a necessity, otherwise you're going to get fined by these organizations. So if you go to an established rock band, they're playing Smells Like Teen Spirit, the songwriter is going to be making money off of the playing of that song. Who's getting paid off of that song, right? In studying the Rome incident, journalists Ian Halperin and Max Wallace contacted Dr. Osvaldo Galletta, who treated Cobain after the incident. Galletta contested the claim that the Rome overdose was a suicide attempt. We can usually tell a suicide attempt. This doesn't look like one to me, said Galletta, who also contradicted Love's claim that 50 Rohypnol pills were removed from Cobain's stomach. Right. Grant believes Courtney may have mixed a large number of pills into Kurt's champagne, so that when he took a drink, he was actually unknowingly ingesting large amounts of the drug, enough to kill him. But if that's the case, why did she call the police when she found him unconscious on the floor? If she wanted Cobain dead, why didn't she just leave him on the floor until he died? I mean, it's self-explanatory, right? If you make sense of that. It could never be me, right? Grant believes the claim that the Rome incident was a suicide attempt. Was not made until after Cobain's. Wait, hold on. Grant believes the claim that the Rome incident was a suicide attempt was not made until after Cobain's death. Yeah. Oh, he was suicidal. I'm telling you. We could see this coming. Prior to the shooting, some close to Cobain, notably Gold Mountain Records, firmly denied he had wanted to die. Grant believes that if it were true, Cobain's friends and family would have been told in order that they could keep a close watch on him. Yeah, nobody was watching him. They let this... If everybody knew this guy was suicidal, right, or those close to him knew he was suicidal, why just leaving him by himself for 3 days? No contact. However, others assert that these denials were simply self-serving. Well, I guess if you're making a statement that it was suicidal like 3 years prior, I guess, you know, it's human nature, innit? Like, they probably got fucking sick of checking up on him at that point. Just like, whatever. I've got to live my own life, right? If that's as far rooted as this knowledge of his suicidal tendencies, you know, are rooted. Lee Ronaldo, guitarist for Sonic Youth, told Rolling Stone Rome was only the latest installment of those around Cobain, keeping a semblance of normalcy for the outside world. Right. Grant counters the claim that he profits from the sale of casebook kits on his website, but wait, he profits from the sale of casebook kits on his website by stating that it offsets some of the cost of his investigation. Grant stated, "I wrestle with that, but if I go broke, I'll have to give up my pursuit and Courtney wins." I don't know what all of this is about. Sergeant Donald Cameron, one of the homicide detectives involved in the case, dismissed Grant's theory outright, saying, "Grant hasn't shown us a shred of proof that this was anything other than suicide," while Seattle homicide detective Mark Blah, who reviewed the case, was quoted as saying of Grant, "An experienced detective would never have come up with the theories that he's come up with." Grant, in turn, has accused Cameron of being a personal friend of Courtney Love. Dylan Carson told Halperin and Wallace that he also did not believe that Grant's theory was valid, and in an interview with Broomfield implied that if he believed that his friend was murdered, he would have dealt with it himself. The thing is, right, look at Nirvana nowadays. Nirvana is still as big a brand as ever. Nirvana didn't have time to shit on their legacy. They put out 3 good records and then it was over. within a short amount of time. And in 2025, you go to HMV and you look at the shirts, and they're going to be selling Nirvana shirts. And do you know why they're going to be selling Nirvana shirts? Because they still sell. The albums still sell. When I do reaction videos on Nirvana, they get more views than the majority of other bands to this day. The energy and the elements and the attitude that Nirvana had, and the promotion via the Foo Fighters and so forth, that still exists. You know, Dave Grohl is Dave Grohl, but he was the drummer of Nirvana, right? He's still a walking advertisement for the brand in such a high degree. He's not just like in a little local band. He's in the flipping Foo Fighters, right? This band still sells like anything. This brand is still larger than life. So whomever is making money is making money. And the thing is, right, Courtney Love was linked in, because if you've read The Game by Neil Strauss, yeah, where he talks about infiltrating the community of pickup artists, in Hollywood, they had a big building and randomly she was there. She had her ear to the ground. If anything, she might be connected to... So, filmmaker Nick Broomfield decided to investigate the theories himself, brought a film crew to visit a number of people associated with both Cobain and Love, including Love's estranged father, Cobain's aunt, one of the couple's former nannies. Broomfield also spoke to the Mentors band leader, Eldon El Duce Hoke, if that's how it's pronounced, who claimed that Love had offered him 50... What? Who are the Mentors? An American heavy metal band known for their deliberate shock rock lyrics. Okay, so take that into consideration. Deliberate shock rock lyrics. Take that into consideration. The guy who maybe writes these songs claimed that Love had offered him 50 grand to kill Cobain. Although he claimed that he knew who killed Cobain, he did not mention a name and offered no evidence to support his assertion. However, he mentioned speaking to someone called Alan or Elaine before quickly interjecting, "I mean my friend," then laugh. This is weird. Like, this whole segment is weird. Not weird in the fact that, like, I'm reading this and thinking, oh, this is bold. It's just sort of like, what the fuck? Who's this guy? I'll let the FBI catch him, he says. So if somebody's making bold when did he make statements like this? Do you know what I mean? When were these statements made? So he finished the documentary and it was released in 98. So why wasn't this guy, like, taken in and grilled by the professionals that know how to assess and read you and break you down like anyone else? You know what I mean? Like nobody else, actually. Why? How can you make statements like that? According to Mentors bass player Steve Broyd, the whole story was concocted to sell supermarket tabloids. Now that's the thing. When you look at the Mentors Wikipedia, and this is all orchestrated and constructed, like if the powers that be were actually behind this, and I'm saying this not to say, oh, it was a cover up from one particular person. Like I'm saying, I'm implying if this is a conspiracy, this is a big money making ploy that had to be sealed the heck tight, and law enforcement were involved in this as well. If you were to approach it from a conspiratorial view, right? It's, you know, crazy. But it does say first and foremost that they're a deliberate shock rock band, so an edgy guy making edgy statements is not surprising, right? According to Mentors bass player Steve Broyd, the whole story is concocted to sell supermarket tabloids. Broomfield incidentally captured Hoke's final interview as he died days later when he was struck by a train in the middle of the night. Days later, this guy, who might have been airing everything out, got struck by a train in the middle of the night. That's not suspicious at all, is it? This is crazy. This is crazy. Broomfield, this is crazy. You shouldn't fuck around with this energy, man. Do you know, when I was younger and performing in bands, I was like, oh man, it's going to be sick when we get picked up and all this and that. And we blah, 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 blah. And then you meet the middle ground where you learn about how the music industry works and how the loans work and how the contracts work and the 360 deals. And you're like, bro, do we have to do this? This is shit. And then you get older, and if anything, you look back on them days and say, you know what? It might have actually been a blessing in disguise that we didn't really get anywhere, because if you have a message to the people and you can influence the people, especially the youth, do you not think people are going to want to use you and puppeteer you to engineer the direction of society, you know? It's beyond music and art at this point. Broomfield titled the Finnish documentary Kurt and Courtney, which you know, Kurt also 27 Club. I don't think the 27 Club holds so much weight because people die every day at every age, you know? So it's not necessarily a thing. In numerological terms, if you wanted to get esoteric about it, 2 and 7 equals 9, and 9 is the start of something new, right? As we go from 9 onwards, we start the cycle again. It's new beginnings. That's what you would approach it in an esoteric sense. And believe it or not, there is like an occult element to some of these sacrificial circumstances that we come across. Like there is. You have to pay attention to these things. Broomfield titled the Finnish documentary Kurt and Courtney, which was released on February 27th, 98. In the end, Broomfield felt he had not uncovered enough evidence to conclude the existence of conspiracy. I mean, the fact that this guy got struck by a train 2 days after making such a bold statement, to me, that's a conspiracy in itself. In a 1998 interview, he summed up his thoughts. I think that he committed suicide. I don't think that there was a smoking gun. I've heard this before. What does smoking gun mean? It means it's a reference to an object or a fact that serves as conclusive evidence of a crime or similar act. And I think there's only one way you can explain a lot of things about his death. Not that he was murdered, but there was just a lack of caring for him. I just think that Courtney had moved on and he was expendable. Ian Halperin and Max Wallace. Journalists Ian Halperin and Max Wallace followed a similar path and attempted to investigate the murder theory themselves based on evidence gathered in interviews. Halperin and Wallace believed that Cobain wanted to divorce Love near the time of his death and that she was looking for a vicious divorce lawyer. I mean, the fact that she's hiring a personal investigator is self-explanatory, right? To help crush a prenuptial agreement. Did they get a prenup then? Did they get one? She had reportedly signed that would keep their respective fortunes separate in the event of divorce. Bro, she was like, fuck that. Hey, all is fair in love and war. I can't hate her for that. As a man, it's a piss take, but go get your money, man. Go get your money. Don't kill anyone to get your money, but hey. They also made the case that because Nicholas Hartshorne, the coroner in Cobain's case, was an admitted friend of love, this was a conflict of interest. Like, how do you know all these people? The things I want to say, I can't say because I'm not inviting that energy, but who do you know, right, when it comes to everyone who surround... Let's say you committed a crime, yeah? Wouldn't it be great if you just happened to know everyone in every industry that was there then involved around that particular crime? Their initial book, Who Killed Kurt Cobain, was released in 1999 and drew a similar conclusion to Broomfield's film. While there wasn't enough evidence to conclusively prove foul play, there was more than enough to demand the case be reopened. The notable element of the book included their discussions with Grant, who had taped... Bro, they could open it up 5 years from now and do a documentary and push it in the media and sell t-shirts and merchandise and do a re-release on the vinyls and everything. Why the hell not? Why the hell not? That's business. Whether it was a suicide or not, it's sort of like, why not keep kicking this dead horse forever? Do you know? The idea that it draws a unresolved answer means until the end of time it's going to be open for discussion and it's going to continue selling. It's going to continue marketing. It's a golden goose within the world of music. A notable element of the book included their discussions with Grant, who had taped nearly every conversation he had undertaken whilst he was working for Love. Over the next several years, Halpern and Wallace collaborated with Grant to write his second book, 2004's Love and Death, The Murder of Kurt Cobain. The thing is, right, the private investigator who worked with Love, like, I'm not going to look into their actions, because maybe they're taking us off of the right path anyway, but if you hire someone to do private investigation work, shouldn't they just keep their mouth shut, really, afterwards? Shouldn't point the finger at me, oh, it was them. Bruh, I paid you. Keep it cushy, yeah? The overall consensus among Cobain's close friends and family is that he died by suicide. However, some of Cobain's friends and family members also believe Cobain was murdered. Hank Harrison, Courtney Love's father, has shared his belief that Love had a motive there. Bro, who's Hank Harrison? Why is he going in on his daughter? Has shared his belief that Love had a motive. There is evidence of foul play and the case should be reopened. Cobain's grandfather, Leland Cobain, has also publicly stated that he believed Cobain was murdered. In August 2005, Sonic Youth's Kim Gordon was asked about Cobain's death in an interview for Uncut magazine. When asked what she thought to be Cobain's motive for suicide, Gordon replied, "I don't even know that he killed himself. There are people close to him who don't think he did." When asked if she thought someone else had killed him, Gordon answered, "I do, yes." In the same interview, Gordon's then husband and collaborator Thurston Moore stated, "Kurt died in a very harsh way. It wasn't just an OD, he actually killed himself violently. It was so aggressive, and he wasn't an aggressive person. He was a smart person, he had an interesting intellect, so it kind of made sense because it was like, wow, what an effing gesture. But at the same time, it was like something's wrong with that gesture. It doesn't really lie with what we know." However, in 2005, in a piece she wrote for The Guardian, Gordon said that she had not been surprised to hear of Cobain's suicide, stating, "I'll always remember the day Thurston called me to tell Kurt had shot himself. Of course, I was totally shocked, but I wasn't entirely surprised. There had been an incident in Rome where Kurt had OD'd, but the details were never clear." It's the ambiguity, isn't it, really? Others, however, have dismissed or ignored the conspiracy theories surrounding Cobain's death. In an interview with The Independent, former Nirvana manager and friend of Cobain, Danny Goldberg, emphasized Cobain's erratic and depressed behavior in the days and weeks leading up to his death, stating, "It's ridiculous. He killed himself. I saw him the week beforehand. He was depressed. He tried to kill himself 6 weeks earlier. He talked and written about suicide a lot. He was on drugs. He got a gun. Why do people speculate about it? The tragedy of the loss is so great people look for other explanations. I don't think there's any truth to it." Nothing to see here, people. Nothing to see here. On an Ask Me Anything hosted by the Nirvana subreddit, bassist Chris Novoselic discussed the speculation when asked by a Redditor about what he would say if Kurt Cobain was able to listen to the forum, and he said, I can't believe people think that I would confess to them being part of a criminal conspiracy, especially online. Also, I beg anyone who thinks they have any real evidence of foul play to go to the police. Finally, one of the reasons I'm convinced Kurt killed himself is that he purchased a 20-gauge shotgun. Kurt was not interested in hunting birds or squirrels. He bought that firearm as a suicide device. Suicide is not rational. But Kurt didn't buy it, did he? They said that the gun was bought by someone else. In the April 19th, 2004 issue of People magazine, some of his family shared a statement about his death. "Our family has dreaded the 10th anniversary of the death of our son, stepson and brother Kurt Cobain. Not only do we mourn his passing, but we can never forget him because even after 10 years, we're constantly reminded by the controversy surrounding his death and the innuendos that he was murdered. With the death of a loved one by suicide, a family experiences the guilt and what ifs. With the death of an icon, it never goes away. We all know that Kurt killed himself. Courtney did not kill him, nor did she have him killed. We hope that all the quacks who try to make money by questioning his death will remember the music and remember that he did have a family that loved him and a beautiful little girl who didn't deserve to be forever reminded of the garbage surrounding his death. Don and Jenny Cobain and family, Bellingham Wash." Fascinating. Fascinating. I'm just going to open up another page. I'm just going to have a look where the money went. One moment. All right, people. So, yeah, quite simply just searched where did Kurt Cobain's money go, and this came up. This is financemonthly.com. Who inherited Kurt Cobain's money? Let's just have a little dig to see what they're saying. Any food for thought? This was put out April 1st, 2025. This was published on April Fool's Day, right? Pay attention to the details. Who inherited Kurt Cobain's money? Kurt Cobain wasn't just a rock star, he was a cultural icon as the frontman of Nirvana. He helped define the... Okay. The majority of his estate was passed down to his wife, Courtney Love, and his daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. This article will break down where it all went and answer some of the most asked questions. When Kurt Cobain died on April 5th, 1994, his net worth was estimated to be around $50 million, which adjusted for inflation would be over $100 million today. As his widow, Courtney Love inherited the majority of his estate, which included publishing rights, personal assets, and real estate holdings, which you tell me the details how that intertwines with the prenup situation that was getting arranged prior to the death, right? At the time of his death, Nirvana was still generating massive revenue from albums. Still to this day does, right? And their music catalogue continued to bring in millions. Courtney Love controlled over 90% of his estate, giving her significant power over how Kurt's intellectual property and financial assets were handled. However, Love later faced financial struggles and sold portions of the Nirvana catalogue to different entities over the years. 2006, she sold 25% of her rights to Nirvana's publishing catalogue for an estimated $50 million, stating that it was too much responsibility for her to manage. Of course, it was too much. Bruh, do you think people don't go missing for $50 million? Do you not think it? Do you not think the most known person of all time ever would go missing for 50 mil? That's not a joke, is it? That's money right there. This is crazy. Kurt Cobain's music royalties were a major part of his wealth. Nirvana's music continues to be streamed millions of times each month, and merchandise sales remain strong. Since Cobain was the primary songwriter for Nirvana, a large portion of the band's publishing royalties went directly to his estate. After Kurt's passing, Courtney Love managed most of his royalty earnings. However, as their daughter, Frances Bean Cobain, grew older, she gained control over a large part of her father's estate. Bro, I got to give some respect, and I got to think, man, it's all right having a couple of quid in your back pocket, but imagine the psychological impact this to this day has upon his daughter. Is Frances the daughter of both Kurt and Courtney Love? I think so, right? By 2010, Frances Bean Cobain inherited 37% of her father's estate, which included rights to his name, image, and part of his music royalties. As of today, Frances reportedly earns over $100,000 per month from her father's royalties and trust funds. Whoa. While she has described her wealth as something she struggles with emotionally, Frances has been vocal about honouring her father's legacy while maintaining her own identity. This is them there both together. $100,000 a month. That in itself is the foundation of the conspiracy. Bro, you go to an impoverished area, someone will do dumb stuff for a few grand. Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love purchased... I'm not even pointing fingers or doing anything. I'm just reading the article. I'm just saying, geez, there's some money involved in this. Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love purchased a Seattle home in '94, just months before his passing. That house, located in the Denny Blaine neighborhood of Seattle, was a 4,000 square foot mansion with breathtaking views of Lake Washington. Let me tell you what, though. Given they're relatively young, they had their heads screwed on. Like, as far as the money coming in and investing the money and not just wasting the money, smart people, right? Intelligent people. Following Kurt's death, Courtney Love lived in the home for a short time before selling it in '97 for $2.9 million. The new owners tore down the greenhouse where Kurt passed away, but the rest of the house remains standing. As of today, the home is privately owned and the owners have maintained a low profile. However, fans of Kurt Cobain still visit the adjacent Veretta Park. Who lives there now? Who lives there now? Kurt Cobain's estate remains incredibly valuable. Even decades after his passing, Nirvana's music continues to generate millions, and his image is widely used in pop culture and fashion. Today, Kurt Cobain's estate is estimated to be worth over 450 mil, making him one of the highest earning deceased musicians. Though his family have seen ups and downs in handling his wealth, both Courtney Love and Francis have played significant roles in managing his legacy. Kurt Cobain's impact on music. Yeah. What more needs to be said? That was put out on April's Fool's Day, just to re-clarify there. They wouldn't laugh at us, would they? So, there we go. What do you think? Me, personally, I don't know. I'm going to say that. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. The money's not going into my pockets. I don't know. And I'll leave that there. Let me know what you think. Peace.